Hello, church family. I'm here with Dr. Ryan Cozy. He is a PhD statistician, and he is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Infinity Alliance, a network that we co-founded 4 years ago to partner with churches not only in Southwest Florida to reach every man, woman, and child here, but with churches around the country. We would partner together and commit to presenting the gospel to every man, woman, and child in our nation, giving them a repeated opportunity to see, hear, and respond to the gospel through a missional church. He's also part of the team at the chapel in Buffalo, New York, where Jerry Gillis is lead pastor, and Jerry serves on the leadership team of Infinity Alliance. And he's been with us the last 2 days evaluating our spiritual formation process. As you know, if you've been here for any period of time, every 6 months we survey all of our people at both campuses on how we're growing and the outcomes, the measurable values that we have here at Summit Church. And not only is he looking at how we're individually and corporately growing in those areas, but how, as we grow in those areas, how it's impacting our ability to present the gospel to the people that we do life with, and how effective we are at joining God in his mission. And so, Ryan, thank you for being here.
Sure.
You have found some great information as you have been poring over the data the last couple of days. And I just want you to quickly share some of the things that you have found.
Sure. Well, one of the quick overarching things that I noticed in terms of the church in general is conversion growth. So in the United States, it's very difficult for a lot of churches to basically have over a 10% rate of conversion in the church. And what that means to us is that a lot of people are, when churches grow, a lot of the churches grow because people are transferring in from other churches. Mm-hmm. And ideally, you want to be over 10% conversion growth in a church. I believe it's Blackaby who says 20% would be phenomenal. And one of the things that I was surprised with right off of the bat is if you were to take 100 people from Summit Church, basically between 15 and 17 of every 100 people in your church is a follower of Christ because of the gospel being shared to them in either Summit or through someone from Summit. And so that translates into a 15 to 17% rate of conversion. And that's a big number for a church of this size for sure.
That's fantastic. And what other factors did you find that contributed to not only people's spiritual growth, but also their ability to live missionally?
Yeah, in terms of living missionally, that's the concept we're focusing on here. One of the first things I noticed right off the bat is intentional community, as you all define it. It matters here. And as a researcher, what I mean by that is when I look at those who are involved in an intentional community versus those who are not in your church, we clearly see a distinctive difference between those two groups, that those who are involved in an intentional community are much more likely to live missionally outside the four walls of the church as opposed to those who are not in an intentional community.
So those are involved in a small group, or those are involved in the women's Bible study or men's discipleship groups, yes, or focus community or MSI. Those individuals, definitely that affects their ability not only to grow spiritually, but also to be an extension of the gospel.
Absolutely.
That's great. What else did you find?
Baptism matters. Quite frankly, what we see in the context of this survey is that when it comes to being present, to giving proclamation, and to saturating an area for the gospel, what we find in your church is that when people have been baptized, the likelihood of them to be present, to proclaim, and to offer the gospel opportunity and to saturate an area, if you've been baptized, your likelihood of being more missional outside the walls of the church is significantly higher than those who have yet to be baptized in your church.
Yeah, that's one of the favorite things we like to do here at Summit, when people make a confession of faith to follow God in believers' baptism, kind of a public declaration of their desire to follow Jesus Christ. And it is encouraging to see how that builds their faith and gives them the courage to live missionally. That's great. What else did you find?
Well, this is something that's different than our church up in Buffalo, and like I said, we know Jerry, and he's a great communicator. Jerry, just saying hi, you're a great communicator. But what we found in our church is that attendance doesn't matter as much when it comes to missional living. However, here it does. And so as a researcher, what I'm finding is that those who are going to church maybe once or twice a month versus those who are going 3 or more times a month, what we're seeing is that the frequency of coming to church, the higher that it is, the more likely that you are to be more missional outside the walls of the church. So what that tells me is that the message embodies the DNA, and it trains and equips so that when people live out their life from Monday to Saturday, or whenever you have church service, those days in between, those are big days for those people who are in greater attendance at your church.
That's great. And as far as key initiatives that you saw that we do, there's some things that we do that definitely have contributed to people's personal spiritual growth as well as them being missionally inclined. Yeah. What were some of those key initiatives?
Well, there were two that really stuck out. One is this initiative that is called act111.org. I'm unfamiliar with it myself.
It's an evangelism training tool that we have used where people can go online and through 4 interactive sessions learn to share their faith. Which is a big obstacle for people living missionally. They don't know how to share the gospel. We have found with the Act 1:1 resource that people could be trained in their own time and their own schedule and get the confidence to share their faith.
Well, that works, clearly. We're seeing that those who are involved in that initiative are more likely to be more missional outside the 4 walls of the church. The second one is this initiative called Fast Forward, which you had communicated to me as a time of...
Yeah, every month, the first Monday typically of every month, we encourage our people to fast and pray with our leadership team and our elders and our staff. We give them a prayer guide they can pick up. And we just encourage them that wherever they are on that day, that they would go to God in prayer on behalf of this church.
Yeah, and that's a significant difference maker. If you're involved in that here, the likelihood of your missional activity is greater than those who are not involved in that.
That's good.
Yeah.
One last thing before we finish up here that you found, I know it's not a distinctive when you look at churches across the country, but you saw a challenge when it comes to whether you're a man or a woman. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. When you asked me to look at the missional activities of your church, there were 25, and I believe 12 of them are discipline-oriented, so things that you're doing to grow in your faith. And then those other 13 are involved in living that out. And the reality is that in all 25 of those categories, females in your church are more missional at a significantly higher level than men. And that is not something that is exclusive to Summit. It's a phenomenon throughout the United States that is fairly consistent. But that's something that we could learn from the women about. But it's also a great point to just lovingly come alongside the men and challenge them in this process.
Yeah, I believe that God is doing tremendous things in the lives of our women. I see it on a regular basis. Our team sees that, as well as I believe that gap that we saw in this last survey is going to shrink. And I think our men are growing incredibly, and they're becoming more faithful as individual followers, as fathers, as husbands. And so I believe that as we move ahead, that we're going to see tremendous growth in our men. And so thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. And we look forward to seeing what God does through our next survey and seeing how our people grow both individually and collectively. Thanks,
All right.
Ryan.
Yeah.